everyone, this is the Undying Nephilim, and today they are finally ready, at least for the patrons, and they are Labrynna, the undisputed most popular faction in Hyrule Conquest. I have no idea why. Well, I have some idea why, but I'm surprised these guys are so popular, and a lot of people are looking forward to them. If you're a patron, you can go ahead and download these guys right now and try them out. But if not, I'm going to go ahead and show them so you can kind of get a feel as to how their faction transitioned from the Total War version of the game to the Conquest version of the game. There's quite a lot to cover for these guys, so this might end up being the longest showcase of a faction video, although watch it end up be the shortest somehow. But anyway, I'll go over the heroes in a separate video as I usually do. And yeah, I guess I will give a quick background on Labrynna for those that do not know who Labrynna is. They're actually really obscure, which is another reason why I'm kind of surprised they're so popular. They're from the Oracle of Ages game, and there's a little bit of them in Oracle of Seasons. But they're one of the more really obscure factions. Labrynna was a kingdom ruled by Queen Ambi in Oracle of Ages, and in that game, Varen kind of became her advisor and influenced her and eventually possessed her and forced her and Labrynna to construct the Black Tower, which is this giant monolithic structure. It's a little bit unclear what exactly the purpose of the Black Tower is in Oracle of Ages. It's sort of related to summoning Ganon, but it's not really clear. But in Nephi canon, it's a little bit different. The premise of Labrynna is similar in Nephi canon. They're ruled by Queen Ambi. Varen befriends Ambi, becomes her advisor, and eventually Labrynna starts constructing the Black Tower. Although the way they go about it is a little bit different. The insane resources needed to construct something like that kind of necessitated that Labrynna has a bit more technology than a little medieval kingdom, so they're sort of post-medieval. They have hints of steampunk in them, although I would not say they are explicitly steampunk. They're kind of like, I guess I would call them proto-steampunk. Because they're still largely medieval in their aesthetics and the way their empire operates, but they have a little bit of a technological edge over most of the other factions in the game. So let me figure out what to go over first. I guess I'll go over some of their gameplay features and then I'll start talking about their individual units. So probably the most notable feature of Labrynna is they have gunpowder. They're not the only faction in the game with gunpowder. There's actually quite a few that have gunpowder. Technically, the Gorons have gunpowder, although they use it in a much different way than most of the other factions. But basically, Labrynna has guns, and I suspect that is why they are so popular, because people love guns. So they have a lot of very powerful ranged units. In fact, I would say their main specialization is siege. They are undoubtedly a siege faction. They have really good siege units, all gunpowder based. They have, riflemen, they have hand cannons. They are designed to blow things up in particular buildings. What other things do they have? They can build defensive things inside enemy territory, which I'll go ahead and demonstrate later. They can also build defensive stuff in neutral territory like sandbags. So yeah, they're hyper aggressive, even though I would consider them a late game faction. They don't have very many good early game options for attacking enemies. I would say the way you play as Labrynna is you focus on your economy. You boom to the late game, and then you just push with a giant force of siege engines and riflemen. But they'll have more options than just gunpowder, as I will show. So I'll go ahead and get into that. I'll go ahead and build all of their buildings. Before I build their buildings, The worker units of Labrynna are Toke slaves, and they're actually much worse than the workers of other factions. So that's kind of another feature I guess I should point out about Labrynna is they actually start out relatively not what's the word I want to look for. They start out their economy in particular starts out really weak, and they slowly progress towards not pure automation, but eventually their farms can upgrade to the point where they're automatically generating food. They have to work for their economy basically. They start out with a crappy economy, and they end up with one of the most powerful economies in the game. But their workers are very weak, they're slow, they harvest slowly, and their carrying capacity is lower than the workers of all the other factions. So really bad worker units, but their workers are very cheap, so you can produce a lot of them. So I'll go ahead and build all of their buildings. And I'll go ahead and show you some of their stuff. Actually, now that I'm placing the buildings, I will be able to talk about one of the other unique features of Labrynna. So I'll go ahead and up the speed so they finish all these buildings. Okay. Now that I got some of their buildings, one of the other features of Labrynna that is being taken from the Kingdom of Hyrule, and the Kingdom of Hyrule will no longer have the feature, is they actually have less buildings than most factions, but all of their buildings start out kind of crappy and they have to be upgraded through several tiers, which I'll go ahead and demonstrate with this house here. So here's just their normal house. It's a nice little villa. You can upgrade it one tier into a manor, and it will have better stats, and it'll provide, although I have the god sheet on, so my population's at max, but it'll provide more population. And then all their buildings can be upgraded a third tier, which is when it adds the sort of steampunky elements. You know, you got these little pipes going on their buildings. So all of their buildings start out kind of mediocre to crappy, and you have to upgrade them 2 tiers to unlock their full potential. That is, in the current version of Hyrule Conquest that's released, that's kind of how the Kingdom of Hyrule's buildings are, but I am going to completely change the way the Kingdom of Hyrule's buildings work. And when I do that, I'll go ahead and make a video showcasing it, because I feel like that kind of sense of progressing buildings fits Labrynna more than the Hylians. So yeah, that was the house. I'll go ahead and show it with their farm here. They start out with just a simple little lettuce farm. You can upgrade it once, and then at the center of the farm, it upgrades it with a drop-off point, so the farmers don't have to go back to the civil center. They can just drop off their loads right there. And then when you fully upgrade the farm and it adds all the little steampunky elements, it just starts automatically generating food. You can have farmers working at it, but you could just take your farmers off and it'll just produce food on its own. And it has upgrades that let it generate food even faster. So yeah, all of Labrynna's buildings can be upgraded to a third tier. And I'll go ahead and show it with their fort here, which is the Star Fort. When you build it in its initial state, it's just a simple fort that you can garrison troops on the walls. But you can upgrade it to have towers in its second tier. And in its third tier, you can upgrade it with ramparts to put cannons on, so you can garrison cannons in it to fire off. Although, right now, Exodarian showed me something I think like a year ago, where you can specify where certain units garrison at certain points, but it's not in the engine at the moment. So, the cannons won't, at the moment, the cannons won't necessarily appear in those spots. So I might disable it until that feature is in the engine, because cannons could potentially garrison up here where they wouldn't quite fit. So that feature might not be in the release. It will be in eventually, though. Alright, what else should I talk about before I get into their units? I think that is mostly it. Actually, there's one thing I can show before I talk about their units. Let me get their workers down here. Their storehouse has a really, really cool feature that I'm kind of proud of. Let me up the speed a little bit. Alright, so I'll have these Tokay gather the metal here. Since instant build is on, they'll just harvest it instantly. So they gather the resources and they bring it back to the storehouse. However, when you fully upgrade the storehouse, they have these little chute things here that go underground back to the storehouse, and the workers will drop the resources off at the little chutes instead of going all the way back to the storehouse. So it comes up the little pipes back into the storehouse. I just thought that was a really funny idea, a really useful one too, so they can kind of spread out the radius of where they collect resources, or where they drop off resources, not collect them. So yeah, I thought that was cool. Anyway, Tokay units. So I already talked about the Tokay slave, which is their basic worker unit. The second unit that they have is actually an upgrade for the Tokay slave. If you look here, you can upgrade them with a spear and a uniform, and you can turn them into Tokay fodder, which is a incredibly crappy and weak spearman unit. Early in the game, they might be pretty useful because they're so cheap to produce. You can just produce masses of them. I think they only cost 25... No, they only cost 20 materials, so they're very, very cheap. They're probably one of the cheapest units in the game. They're technically cheaper than workers, because workers, I believe, cost 50 food. So yeah, only 20 material there. I mean, you have to factor in the cost of the workers too, and the workers cost 25 food. So for 25 food and 20 material, you get incredibly cheap spearman unit. There's nothing really special about the Tokay fodder other than the fact that it's a Tokay. Well, I guess the fact that they're so cheap is a special feature, but there's no combat. I mean, they're anti-cavalry, so I guess that counts as something too, but they're very weak, so you'll probably only use them early in the game if you're being harassed by, say, like the Goma are rushing you with a bunch of units. You can turn all your workers into these guys to help defend your base. So yeah, that's the Tokay fodder. Next up is the Pathfinder, which is the scout unit for Labrynna. As is the case with most scout units, there is nothing particularly special about them other than the fact that they can detect stealth units. As I say in pretty much every video, stealth is not in the engine yet. It should be soon because we're coming up on a faction that needs stealth to function. But for now, there's no stealth in the game, so scouts are pretty much only useful for uncovering the map and nothing else right now. However, the Pathfinder unit that Labrynna has is armed with a sword, and they actually do have a slightly stronger attack for a scout unit. So early in the game, they might actually be useful for defending your base, or maybe rushing the enemy with some of them and harassing their workers. Still not as good as early game cavalry if you want to rush workers, but they would definitely be a better option than most scout units. So yeah, that is the Pathfinder. And let me go ahead and train all of Labrynna's other units, which requires me to upgrade some of their buildings. So I'll go ahead and upgrade them. And I'll train all of their units. Go ahead and upgrade this one. And make these guys. And I'll upgrade this. And make these. I think that should be all of their units. Hopefully I'm not forgetting one. Alright, so spread these guys out. Alright. First up is the Home Guard, which is this guy right here. He is armed with a mace and a shield. He is, I believe, the lowest tier of their military units, other than the Toke fodder. But he's not that weak. He's pretty decent for such an early game unit. He's got a shield, so he's a bit resistant to piercing attacks like arrows, and he's got a mace, so he deals crushing damage. The main sort of ability these guys have is when you garrison them inside of buildings, they actually make the building they're garrisoned in more resistant to being captured. So if you put these guys in towers or your civil center or your fortress, it'll make it a little bit harder for the enemy to capture them. Of course, if you have like 20 of them garrisoned in the fortress, it'll probably take like 4 times as long to capture it. So they're kind of an anti-capture unit, although capturing buildings isn't a huge feature in the game yet, so they'll be more valuable later on when factions like the Stalfos are introduced. Which the Stalfos are actually coming up pretty soon. I don't know why he's facing the wall, but yeah, when you garrison them in fortresses, they'll buff the capture resistance. So yeah, that was the Home Guard. In terms of the lore, they're basically their police force. They go around enforcing the law. And then next up is the Border Guard, which is this lady here, armed with a crossbow. Initially, they're just kind of a standard archer unit. They have a crossbow, so they deal true damage. They can puncture armor, which is really useful, especially for an early game unit. You can research an ability called camouflage capes for these, and they'll start wearing capes that give them stealth. As I said about 5 minutes ago, stealth is not in the engine, so that will be a feature that won't show up until a little bit later. But that will actually make them pretty valuable. A stealth true damage archer unit sounds pretty wicked. And it's an early game unit too, so you can train them pretty early on. When all those features are in the engine and working, I can see them being very useful for harassing workers. Just kind of sneak them up near the enemy base, park them right outside here, all nice and invisible, and just start sniping their workers with crossbow bolts. That sounds pretty cool. But right now they're just kind of an early game archer unit that can deal true damage. So yeah, that is the Border Guard. Next up is the Tallis Night, which is one of 2 knight units that Labrynna has. The other knight unit is actually a hero unit, so I won't be showing it in this video. But the Tallis Night is a heavily armored guy with a sword and a shield. So he's got really good armor values, as most knight units do. He's classified as a knight unit, so if you're somehow playing as Link, as the Kingdom of Hyrule, and you somehow get control of one of these guys, all of his bonuses will apply to them. But the odds of that happening are probably pretty low. I can't conceive of how a Hylian player would capture a Tallis Night. But actually, if you're playing as the Kingdom of Hyrule and you have Labrynna as an ally, all of Link's abilities will apply to the Tallis Night. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Stupid me. So, yeah. That's a very, very circumstantial ability, though. If you're just playing as Labrynna, they're just a very, very beefy, tanky kind of melee unit. They don't deal tons of damage. Yeah, they only deal 14 hack and 5 pierce damage. So they don't deal a lot of damage, but they have 50 hack armor and 70 pierce armor. So they're very resistant to piercing and hacking attacks. So yeah, one of their beefy units, because most of Labrynna's units actually have very low armor values. They're kind of like glass cannons. So this is probably one of their most valuable units, just based on the fact that it can take a lot of punishment before they die. The next up is another unit wearing some armor, and is also one of Labrynna's valuable units, and it is the line of Pikes. In the Total War version of the game, I did not include any Pike units because the way Pikes worked in Total War, basically made them nearly invincible. They were incredibly overpowered. So I did not include Pike units for any of the factions in the Total War version of the game. It's been so long since I've worked with Medieval 2, so I do not remember exactly why they were broken. It had something to do with the way their animations and the range of the pikes worked. But in the 0D version of the game, in Hyrule Conquest, we can have pikes. And the way the pikemen work is they have a very, very long range for a melee unit. They can attack from very far away. They deal tons of damage to cavalry, so they're a very, very powerful anti-cavalry unit. And they have really good armor. They have 55 pierce armor and 40 hack armor, so they're very, very resistant to most physical attacks. If you want to kill these guys, you'll basically want to gun them down with things like crossbowmen or burn them with magic mages. Do not charge them with cavalry. These guys will slaughter cavalry, which is their intended purpose. And while initially they are not resistant to knockback, the line of pikes, they actually have a tech you can research that makes them completely resistant to knockback. Considering quite a few cavalry units have knockback, they'll basically be like one of the best anti-cavalry units in the game. Nothing will be able to knock back them after you research that tech. So they are an incredibly powerful and valuable unit. If you're going against a faction like Ordana, which has a lot of cavalry, you'll definitely want these guys mixed in with your gunpowder units to help protect them from cavalry charges. Very slow moving unit though, so they're not very fast. I mean, they're not super slow, but they're not as fast as most of their infantry. But yeah, that is the line of Pike. That should make a lot of people happy who are wondering why Pike units were not in the Total War version of the game. Now Labrynna can actually do Pike and shot. Oh, I almost forgot. I was gonna move on to their creature and cavalry units, but Labrynna's commander unit is the Borgata. He is a late game commander unit. He's got a shield, so he has very high pierce armor. I actually think 80 pierce armor might be too high for him. I'm probably going to have to lower that. That seems ridiculously high, but he's got pretty good armor. He's got a sword and shield, and when switching weapons is implemented in the engine, not switching weapons, when multiple attacks for a unit type is implemented in the engine, he'll be able to switch to a pistol and become a gunpowder unit. But for now, he's just a very strong sword and shield infantry commander. I'm not sure how to... Yeah, infantry... Well, he's not an infantry commander. He himself is an infantry unit, but he's also a commander. That's what confused me. Anyway, that is the Borgata with his awesome Lionel mask. A nice flowing red cape. Alright, now I'll move on to their cavalry and creatures. So, Labrynna, while they are known for their gunpowder, actually have quite a few really interesting creature units. I would actually say they have some of the best creature units in the game. In particular, this guy here, but I'll get to him in just a second. I'll start with their cavalry, which is the blue Caballero, which is these blue bears mounted by a rider. And this is their only cavalry unit. Moves pretty slow for a cavalry unit, although it's not super slow, but they're very, very powerful in terms of the damage they deal because they're freaking bears. They just maul enemies with their claws. If I remember right, they are actually an I want to say they're an anti-infantry. Like, they deal more damage to infantry, but they might actually be an anti-cavalry unit. I am forgetting. But, yeah. The Blue Bears of Labrynna. Very cool cavalry unit, I think, anyway. They are also completely immune to knockback, so that's a really handy feature too. And then next up is the Aquadongo, which I forgot to mention. The blue bears are roughly inspired by Moosh, who is also from the Oracle games. He was the blue bear. So in Nephi canon, there's just a species of blue bears that are native to Labrynna, and since the Labrynnians do not have horses in their homeland, they eventually just domesticated the bears to use them as their cavalry. And then anyway, the second creature unit, actually their first creature unit, these are technically cavalry, not creature units. So the first creature unit is the Aquadongo, which is based on Dimitri from the Oracle games. He was the red Dodongo. I don't remember if in the game it said he was from the Crescent Islands, but you find him by the Crescent Islands, and in that game you use him to cross the ocean to get to the Crescent Islands, which is where the Toki are from. So in Nephi canon, they are a species of aquatic Dodongos that are from the Crescent Islands. And since they're called Aquadongos and Dimitri could swim, I think it should be evident that these are an aquatic unit. So Labrynna can use them to swim across the water. They move very slow. I think I do want to increase their movement speed. I feel like they move a bit too slow, but they're basically just they're a creature unit that you can use to cross bodies of water. So if you're playing on a map that doesn't have any water, they're not quite as useful. However, say it with me, once stealth is added into the engine, these guys will have an upgrade that will allow them to be stealthed when they are moving through water, which will be awesome. So they'll become a little bit more useful in that regard once stealth is added into the engine. But yeah, that is the Aquadongo. Secondly, their second creature unit, and probably one of the better creature units in the game, is the Bueno Boxer, which is this crazy kangaroo here. Somewhere in the world right now, a Norwegian is weeping. But yeah, the Bueno Boxer is inspired by a Ricky from the Oracle games, and he was the kangaroo animal companion. So there is now a species of kangaroo in Nephi canon. They're from the Far East, and Labrynna just basically imported them to their zoos because they thought they were just weird creatures to display at a zoo. And then they realized these guys are hostile bastards that punch the crap out of people and kick people to death. So they decided, hey, let's domesticate them and put them in our armies. So Labrynna has these giant hopping rats that box people to death, which is just ridiculous, but I kind of like it. So they are a fast-moving, not infantry, they're classified as a creature, but they're a fast-moving melee unit that punches the crap out of people. You can upgrade them at the zoo to deal knockback damage so that they just, send people flying whenever they hit them. So they have a very, very high or very, very fast attack rate too. So when you upgrade them with knockback, they'll just be beating the crap out of everything around them. It's pretty awesome. I showed a video the other day with a huge swarm of these guys just punching the crap out of moblins. So I would say they're one of the most useful creature units in the game. So yeah, that is the Bueno Boxer. Bueno as a nickname comes from what game was he from? I think he was from Link's Awakening. There was this this creature, I think it was in Link's Awakening, that he's one of the mini bosses, and you fight him kind of in a boxing match, and that is where the nickname for this creature comes from, the Bueno Boxer. Anyway, the last, I guess it's technically not a creature unit, it's not really a cavalry unit either, it's classified as a vehicle unit, is the Ursa Wagon, which is this wagon being pulled along by a blue bear. It's pretty similar to Ordana's coach unit, except it's a little bit slower because the bears are not nearly as fast as their horses. And basically what this unit does is you can garrison ranged units in the back. In particular, I recommend garrisoning it with gunpowder units, and I'll go ahead and demonstrate that at some point of this video. So you can garrison gunners in it, and then you can keep these guys moving, and they'll keep firing their guns at units chasing them, which is really, really useful. So yeah, that's the Ursa Wagon. I think it's pretty cool. I like the way the design turned out. I kind of rag on Labrynna, but I do kind of like the way they turned out. I do like the way a lot of their units work too. So yeah, that is the Ursa Wagon. Anyway, with that said, we will move on to the stuff that people probably care about, and that is the gunpowder units, which is what Labrynna is most known for. So we will start with the hand cannoneer. And the hand cannoneer is a infantry siege unit, so they are useful for attacking buildings and dealing lots of damage to buildings. Although they can be used to torch a bunch of massed infantry because they deal fire damage. They have a pretty long range, but a very, very low attack rate. So their DPS is relatively low, despite the fact that they deal tons of damage for each of their attacks. They take a very long time to reload. They're basically a mortar, and they carry around this giant cannon. They move pretty slow. I actually think they move a bit too fast. I might make their movement speed even slower. But yeah, that's the hand cannoneer, their first gunpowder unit. And then their most famous gunpowder unit is the Conqueror, which is a guy armed with a musket. It's just a straight up, gunpowder unit. He shoots people with a gun and they die. I don't know what else to really say about them. I'll go ahead and show a bunch of them in action after I'm done showing all of their units. I went ahead and set up a bunch of Gerudo here to get slaughtered. But yeah. That is the Conqueror. And then next up is the Cannon. Their first siege unit, which is a cannon. Again, kind of like the Conqueror. I'm not really sure what else to say about it other than it's a cannon that shoots cannonballs and causes things to explode. It's a very, very straightforward siege unit. It has an extremely long range for a siege unit, though. If I remember correctly, it has the longest range of any siege unit in the game. And you can even upgrade it to have a longer range, so their fire rate is pretty slow, kind of like the hand cannoneer. It takes them a while to reload the cannon, so their DPS is not particularly high, despite the fact that they deal tons of damage with each shot. And they also deal line damage, so when a unit is hit by their cannonballs, the cannonball will keep going in a line and bouncing behind the unit, and it will damage a bunch of guys behind it, which is really awesome. Since their attack deals knockback too, you'll just see a bunch of guys go flying backwards when they attack. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that on the poor Gerudo over there a little bit later. And then lastly, I would say probably even more than the Conqueror, the iconic unit of Labrynna is the Steam Tank, which I very nearly got rid of. I very nearly got rid of this unit, and they would have had a different unit, but I was convinced to keep the Steam Tank in the Conquest version of my Zelda game. So the Steam Tank, what is it? Well, it's basically just like the cannon, except it moves a bit faster, and it has extremely durable armor. So this unit is very hard to kill. It has a very slow fire rate, though, and its range is shorter than the cannon. So it has to get a little bit closer to enemies to fire, but basically it's an incredibly hard to kill siege unit. If you can manage to get your guys up close, it can't do anything. So it has tons of blind spots and it can't do anything up close. So that's the way to kind of beat it, is to get up close to it and slowly whack it to death. I'm considering making it so this unit can actually be captured, much like a building. I haven't decided yet, but it might be interesting if infantry unit can like come up and slowly capture this unit and take control of it. That might be an interesting weakness that this unit has. But right now you can't capture them. But I'm considering doing that, making it so this unit can be captured. But also, like the cannon, they deal linear splash damage, so their cannonballs will continue on through units and deal damage and knockback to guys behind them. So yeah, that is the steam tank. Let me see if I forgot any more of their units. I think that is all of their units, other than their Titan, which... it's become a tradition. I'll go ahead and show their Titan. I just won't go into details about her. I'll also build their Wonder to show the Titan. I'm trying to think if... I think they do have one more unit that I'm forgetting. Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14... Yeah, I feel like I'm forgetting a unit. Well, if I do end up forgetting a unit, I will show it in the hero video. I can't shake the feeling I'm forgetting one unit that isn't a hero unit. But anyway, the wonder of Labrynna is the Black Tower, which is so tall you can't even see the top of it. And get the dev thing up. And let's see if I can... yeah, there we go. Now I can zoom out further. Show the top of the Black Tower. It is the tallest wonder in the game. I still haven't decided what exactly it does in terms of bonuses. In terms of the lore, it's no secret that the reason Varen is building the Black Tower in Nephi Canon is because it's a portal to the realm of the Tweely. And she's basically using it to get back there and reconsolidate her power, and then use it to launch another attack into Hyrule with her Tweely forces, combined with Labrynna's forces. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that's been known since before I even started on the game, that that's what Varen was doing in Labrynna. Anyway, their Titan. Eventually, I'll find other sounds to use for all the different wonders, but for now, I'll use the Temple of Time sound. Anyway, their Titan. I won't say what it is, and I won't go into any details until the Hero and Titan video, but I'll go ahead and show it because it's awesome. With all the little smoke and stuff coming out. I love the sound effects too for its walking. Yeah, that's the Labrynna Titan. It'll have some really cool abilities when abilities are added into the engine. So anyway, I'll go ahead and show Labrynna's gunpowder unit slaughtering those Gerudo. Actually, first I'll go ahead and show a little drive-by with their Ursa Wagon and some gunners garrisoned in it. I'll go ahead and make some more, some other gunpowder units. And I'll lure all of these Gerudo into a slaughter. I'll just park these guys here, and I'll lure them back to my base with the Ursa Wagon. Alright. So, let's do a little drive-by. I'll circle around them, and then I'll come back and lure them into all my cannons and gunners. Alright. Ursa drive-by. I love it. They should be firing any moment now. Yep, there they go. See the little muzzle flash in the smoke clouds. Oh, get out of there. Already killed 2 of them. Oh, they're just barely keeping out of range. That's really funny. Oh, that guy must have missed. Anyway, these guys should be attacking any minute now. Awesome. Oh, they accidentally killed the horse. It's so awesome. Oh, they barely attacked him. I'll send all of them after them. All of you guys go attack. It's so great. I love these cannons. Fire at will. Fire. I take back all the smack talk I've said about Labrynna. I can't deny just the gunners and the cannons and the tanks are just awesome. Just seeing units drop dead from the guns. That's so great. They can basically one-shot most unarmored units. It's pretty awesome. I love it. I've almost slaughtered them all. Oh, he's probably gonna die. That's so great. I love the explosions from the steam tanks. Alright. I think that's probably just about it for Labrynna. I slaughtered all of their units. So yeah, that's Labrynna. They're kind of awesome. I always say a lot of bad things about them because I've never really been a fan of them, but I can't deny how awesome their units are, especially their gunpowder. It's really cool just seeing a line of gunners shoot down a bunch of Gerudo. I will double check really quick just to make sure I did not forget anything. I'm pretty sure I covered all of their factions' abilities and their units. I still can't shake the feeling that I forgot one of their units. Oh, yep, I did. Alright, the Pioneer. I knew I forgot a unit. So, before I end the video, the Pioneer. And right now, he's not particularly valuable. He has a bit of value, but what the Pioneer does, he's a non-combat unit, but what he does is he can build defensive structures in neutral and enemy territory. Eventually I'll make it so he can build more than just these. I'll make it so he can maybe build like stakes and little barricades that you can garrison your gunners in, but right now he can just build walls and towers and sandbags. Guess I'll go ahead and demonstrate the little sandbags. I knew I forgot something. I'm glad I remembered. So I'll go ahead and build the sandbags in not my territory. The sandbags are kind of interesting because I've got to make some more pioneers to finish them over there. The sandbags, they halt the enemy movement like a normal wall, so enemies can't just, you know, charge over them. So they're useful for protecting your units from enemy charges. And what I think the sandbags will do is they'll actually provide bonuses to your gunpowder units. So you have your gunpowder units standing near them, they'll have some kind of, I don't know, maybe an accuracy bonus because they're less afraid of enemies charging into them. They can take a few extra seconds to aim, and they're more accurate. Something like that. I haven't decided yet. And then eventually I'll make it so that these guys can just build a whole bunch of different cool things out in no man's land. I'm thinking they can build stakes, so you can lay down your sandbags, and then on the outside you could put a layer of stakes that'll maybe damage units that try to move through them. So I'm just imagining now a Labrynna player that has really good map control. They can just like build sandbags around an enemy base and kind of seal them in, and then just shell them with their gunpowder. I can see a lot of crazy situations like that happening. God, I knew I forgot a unit. I'm so glad I remembered before I ended the video. So yeah, that is the Pioneer. Alright. Now I'm certain I have covered anything. If I did happen to forget another unit, I'll go ahead and cover it in the hero video. So yeah, that was Labrynna. I already know that a lot of people like this faction. I'm really looking forward to releasing them to the public to see how people react to them. If you're a patron, you should be able to download them the moment that you watch this video. If not, they will be up the same day that this video is up. It might take a while for it to completely upload because it's a pretty big file. But although it'll probably take a long time for this video to upload to YouTube because YouTube's pretty slow. So I don't know. You'll either be able to download them as soon as you watch this video or sometime in the next 5 to 10 hours after this video goes up. Let's just say that. So hopefully you guys like the way Labrynna looks. Hopefully you like their gunpowder units. I'll go ahead and upgrade some of their buildings just so you can get a look at their more steampunky stuff. Yeah. Fully upgrading their building makes them look a little bit more steampunk. Kind of goes with the theme of them desecrating all their beautiful medieval buildings with ugly pipes. Although the architecture that I chose for their buildings is actually Romanesque, which is, if I remember correctly, it's actually late medieval or post-medieval in terms of the style of architecture. Some architecture historical buff will probably yell at me at the comments, no, it's not post-medieval. I cannot remember the exact year that this style became popular in Spain and Italy, but anyway, that's Labrynna. Next up, the next faction I'll be working on is the Fairies, the Fairies of Tarm. I'm really looking forward to working on them. I actually think the Fairies are cooler than Labrynna. I think they have really, really awesome units and a lot of really interesting abilities. They'll be able to mess with the seasons, which is interesting. I look forward to trying to get that to translate to affecting the way the map looks and stuff. I don't know if I'll be able to pull that off, but I don't know. I'll talk about it when I finish the fairies and I show them in the fairy video. So anyway, hopefully you guys liked Labrynna. If you want to support me and my work, as well as get access to Labrynna early, there's a link to my Patreon in the video description. And if you guys do try out Labrynna, hopefully you enjoy them. And stay tuned for the next video. You guys have a good one.
Hey, listen!